Hello, and welcome to the Anexinet Infrastructure Modernization Podcast. Here on AIM, we invite industry professionals and subject matter experts on to discuss current trends and technology topics. Today, we're going to talk about modern managed operations with the managed ops team from Anexinet. There's quite a few people around here, so we're going to let them introduce themselves. Ryan, we'll start with you.
Hi, this is Ryan Benner. I'm the VP of PreSales and Services Sales at Anexinet.
Matt?
My name is DeCurtis. I am the Director of Managed Operations for Anexinet.
Dave?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dave Mahoney, and I'm the Enterprise Services Architect in PreSales for Anexinet.
And finally, Connor?
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Connor Laverty, and I am the Business Development Manager for Managed Services at Anexinet.
All right, guys. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
As we get started here, maybe we should just start with the basics. What is managed services? What is managed operations? Matt, I'll let you start.
Sure. So managed operations, what we intend to do is, enable organizations to be more efficient in the way that they deliver IT services to their employees by providing automation into the environment, remote management of desktops, servers, and network equipment. So by utilizing our network operations teams and our customer support center, we're able to take the day-to-day blocking and tackling away from that on-site or hybrid IT that you may have, and really allow them to be strategic for the organization again.
So Matt, managed services based on the way you described the value. Do you think that that's more appropriate for large customers, or do you feel like the small and medium-sized business also have a foot in the game for managed services?
Sure. So Dave, that's a great question. I think the objective, whether you're a small business, large enterprise, is to deliver first-class customer service to either your end user, your employees, or your customers. And a lot of times, you're under threat from aging, underperforming hardware and equipment on site. So, how do you mitigate that? And some organizations just don't have the technical ability to launch a program to become less focused on capital IT or on-premise IT. So they look for solutions that will enable scalability in the future, which is typically a cloud solution. So when you look at Anexinet and partnering with Microsoft or AWS, you look at transformation and productivity, efficiency, reliability, and of course the advanced desktop platform.
Yeah, Matt brings up a really interesting point. The primary objective for everybody in information technology since the beginning of the advent has always been to make sure that we are driving the business forward and delivering value. Where it may have began that technology was a tool that helped you increase the efficacy or speed of making money, they weren't necessarily things that the business relied on fundamentally. They were just tools that helped increase productivity. Whereas now that pendulum is swung, right? We need technology to be able to do our jobs effectively because we live in a fully digital age. And he's right. The experience of your employee via the performance and availability of your applications, whether they be in the cloud or on-premise or in a colo, and then also your customer experience of if you offer up an application, those are what drive your business. So those digital and technical tools are what you rely on to make money and to provide a positive employee experience. And there's a common phrase, right? Don't build IT, buy IT. And that goes to this everything as a service kind of ethos that's been out in the world for a very long time. This has all been done before, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. It's more cost effective to leverage the economies of scale and the modern tooling and technologies that managed service providers have access to buy IT as a service and then deliver those excellent experiences both to your employees and your end customers.
Yeah, Dave, I think you nailed it there, especially when you're going into the benefits. You're improving staff and business productivity, through flexibility of, whether it be desktop or servers. You've got faster, more efficient hardware. It helps your customers, potentially improve time to respond to customer service calls. Streamlining data center operations. We've gone into some data centers and have over 100 servers and been able to collapse them into 20. So you're looking at, that footprint, shrinking in size, and you're not necessarily paying for, your heating, cooling, and just, the implied costs to come along just for, standing up a box data center. So yeah, we've seen a lot of that over the years and helped save a lot of organizations a lot of money by doing so.
Right. And that's just in the operating expense of having a data center and server consolidation, resource consolidation. We haven't even talked about staffing resources, right? Why in the world am I going to pay a guy 60, 70, 80, 100 grand a year, when 85% of his job is to patch servers and respond to, incident management or event management related things that come up into a ticketing system, when I can outsource to a managed service provider and provide the same level of value, often with significantly faster mean time to resolution and higher levels of automation at a significantly reduced cost that is well below what it would cost me to pay that person and the additional, 30 to 50% overhead of maintaining a full-time employee. Exactly.
Yeah. The level of service and efficiency definitely goes through the roof. Plus, I feel like when you're outsourcing onshore, you're also inherently receiving more information, documentation, and reporting on what's being done within the environment. I feel like a lot of that internally isn't necessarily captured properly. For us as a business, managed services, you have to be very heavy on documentation because that's what we live by in a remote support model.
Right. Ryan, what's your take on the value of managed services for both both the small business and the enterprise? Why are people getting into this? Why do you think it's so proliferated and ubiquitous nowadays?
I think the reasons for SMB or mid-market versus an enterprise are a little different. Typically what you see in the smaller customer is they just don't have the ability to go out and spend a lot of money on salary costs to staff a broad enough group of technologists to support their environment. Flip side is they still, in many cases, have a lot of those needs. They still have needs to have a network connecting facilities and people. They need security tools. They need data center or cloud resources, right? So, and in many cases, a lot of those types of talent might be different folks. And so, a smaller customer just does not have the ability to staff that broad of a group. And they probably don't want to have to staff it 24/7. So it's pretty much a no-brainer for the smaller customer to take advantage of managed services. It makes more sense for that than the salary cost. Flip side, in the enterprise, it's usually offloading something that might be more considered a niche. So typically we'll see a larger customer want to offload a specific security function or offload a specific data center or cloud function from an operations standpoint. It's an area where they just feel that they don't want to invest the extra resources, or it's not a part of really driving their business forward, their technology forward. They see it as just an easy place to allow someone else to take care of the day-to-day care and feeding, and they can focus on the technology that really drives business.
So that's really interesting. Being able to leverage modern technology capabilities such as cloud and virtual consolidation to reduce operating costs and capital expenditure, to be able to provide services with the maximum efficacy with as little overhead as possible. That's great, and everybody wants to do that. But especially in the mid-market or the SMB space, those paying for those skills in terms of IT operations can be expensive and or prohibitive, especially in a 24/7 circumstance like you alluded to. And that's where managed services can really play a significant role, because you can get a low monthly recurring cost, usually for cents on the dollar, and leverage very mature IT operations processes with all the latest and greatest modern technologies, cloud, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, et cetera, and get that by the IT services as opposed to building it on your own, and really benefit the small business or the mid-market. And then on the flip side, Ryan, I think what I heard you say is The enterprise isn't always so much in outsourcing all of their IT for full operations necessarily. You think it's more of a niche play. I want outside assistance to do these mundane routine tasks that are highly automated and operationalized. And I want to make sure that I get a valuable partner that is going to do that in a streamlined and an effective fashion without having to pay for staff to do it. I want to allocate those funds elsewhere. Did I hear that right on the enterprise part?
Yeah, I think, two simple examples of that that I've seen in the past with previous customers. One customer we worked with was a international pharmaceutical manufacturer, and they decided they just didn't want to be in the help desk business anymore. They didn't see that as strategic to operations, but they needed to deliver a really good experience to their end users. So they said, "Hey, we'll just outsource that to us," and because we were providing that as a service, we had a lot of experience. It was one of our core competencies, where they just didn't see that as a core competency of their own. We provided a 24/7 help desk, supported their global user base, 2 different languages. They were very pleased with the service. Another organization didn't want to manage their firewalls anymore. They had somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 firewalls rolled out to their multiple offices around the country. And it was becoming difficult for them to manage a consistent rule base and keep an experienced staff in-house. So they decided to outsource that to us. To me, when I see the enterprise, an enterprise typically has a larger IT organization, usually broken up into various groups. So when I see an organization like that look to utilize managed services, in many cases it's because there's a particular function that they just don't see as it's a critical piece of the business, but it's not critical to doing business better for them as far as investing in people. And then once in a while you see they are looking at technologies that they couldn't necessarily afford to pay for, don't want to pay for otherwise. So getting into, say, SOC as a service, as opposed to deploying a SIM on site and staffing out the SIM, with a bunch of security analysts and things like that.
Matt, I want to go back to you and talk to us a little bit about, how we've constructed managed services and why it's so important based on the way that we've set it up.
Sure, absolutely. So, if the name of the game is efficiency here, how can we simplify the response to incidents? And a typical network operations center is usually set up where you got a bunch of guys or engineers sitting in a network operations center that are managing a dashboard. Well, you got multiple tools monitoring multiple dashboards, and they all have their own alerts internally. You got to keep your eyes on them. Typically, someone gets up for a lunch break or something like that. Usually those incidents or alerts aren't responded to until that person is back. We've built the automation into all of our tools to dump into our ITSM for auto incident creation, where now our network operations center engineers are no longer managing dashboards. They're managing a queue. So it's an aggregate of all of the systems and all the tools that are deployed. So that gives us a great insight, great incident response, because it's near live, real time, which, we're seeing things go down, and we're alerting our points of contacts that, these things are down. I said, we didn't even realize it was down yet. Thanks for reaching out. And then you discuss the next steps forward in your triaging and your troubleshooting. So, Dave, I'm going to go back to what you were saying earlier. What does managed IT services do to, kind of transform environments? And some of the things that organizations look to do, to transform their IT funding from a capital expense to an operational expense. Managed IT services, help cut on average close to 40%, out of IT budgets and enable for more agile, mobile, productive workforce. Some of the challenges that, a lot of organizations are faced with, the business strategy, to outsource non-core services, enabling and supporting the changing mobile workforce. We've all seen that through the COVID, and, existing IT infrastructure 5 years and older. So, what's the solution to that, that Anexinet could provide? And that's the managed services piece. The IT infrastructure management of your desktops, the end user management, And the benefits are really transforming IT funding from that capital to operational cost, cutting IT costs by over 40%, and really per user cost by up to 70% when you look at your internal capital. It's faster and easier to set up and decommission users in new locations because we do have the tools that allow us to, even though we're centralized, we use tools that enable us to be very efficient remotely. It gives us the power to give those CIOs and those directors of IT the confidence and to be able to sleep at night knowing that they don't have a guy with a beeper under their pillow responding to these incidents, that it's staffed and monitored by a 24/7 network operations center.
Yeah, those are all really important things. So bring it back up for those people that may not be in the know, right? So how are we achieving that 24/7 eyes on glass? Like let's talk about the automation and the tooling and you mentioned ITSM, right? But for those that don't know, right, what is ITSM? Talk to us a little bit about those things.
Yeah, so ITSM is really kind of the lifeblood of your organization or our organization, because that's where we track incidents and we track time and provide our customers the metrics as what's going on in their environment. So the ITSM provides a few different metrics that we're able to report at the end of the month, which gives us a lot of insight as to what's happening. So you've got one server that's throwing 50% more alerts than every single other server, and we can track that trending and determine that, hey, there's an underlying issue here. Why don't we be proactive about this before it grows into a larger issue? It also gives us the ability to really break things down per end user. So is there one end user that's calling in more than any other end user? And does that person need some education on how to use the applications or how to use their machine properly? So continuing that piece is very important as well.
I believe the industry term is problem is between the keyboard and the chair.
I didn't want to say that, but thank you. So the ITSM, really, it gives us a lot of things and a lot of insight to deliver, additional value to our customers. Not only that, it's where we store all of our documentation for our customers. And one of the things that some organizations do is, they don't share the documentation that they collect on your environment. We are a true partnership in what we do. And, the documentation may not exist today in that environment. So by sharing that documentation with our customers, it makes them feel like, they have better insight into what's going on there. But at the same time, they know that we have, and we are watching out, and we have collected, everything that's in their environment.
So sharing the knowledge that you've collected, right? Not just saying, hey, we have all this information, but showing the customers like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we know, and reporting back on that to provide that level of visibility. Right.
Because I think after talking to, CIOs and directors of IT, documentation or the lack of documentation scares them the most, because it may, they have a lead technician walk out the door. There's so much tribal knowledge that leaves with them, and then they're stuck trying to reverse engineer what their network is. And we've been in situations where, we've been called in and we have to go through and we have to recreate all of the configuration files for, the switches, the firewalls, the routers, you name it, all because those credentials walked out the door with their employees. So seeing that and knowing that it's there, they have, the confidence behind it to know that, hey, if there's a staff change or anything like that, we are responsible for restaffing. We have redundancy in our positions. So multiple engineers are out there on site being trained by the other one. So they have visibility. So, if that engineer has to go on vacation, we're able to plug somebody in that has, a short ramp up period before they're effective in that environment. So they see a lot of value there. And not to mention, they don't have to use their HR department. We're in charge of that for staffing.
Right. So let's shift a little bit. Let's Ryan kind of opened the door into security operations and managed security operations specifically. Ryan, why is managed security operations becoming a thing? It seems like outsourcing or having an outside vendor provide security operations for a company would have some inherent risk. Why is this becoming a thing?
It's probably the most difficult area to find talented folks and keep them trained in the latest technologies. So there's one place where it may make a lot of sense to outsource some operational aspects. It would be security.
So you think because people are hard to find and keep them trained, there's a level of expense and difficulty there that people are just saying, I don't want to deal with this, and I'm going to find somebody that has expertise in this and can offer me a managed service that I can trust and has the right agreements in place to keep me safe.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that exactly. It's finding the right people, keeping the right people, being able to afford the right people. And having those people have an expertise in the tool set. It's really difficult in the security space. That's a space that's, very heterogeneous. There's a lot of different companies out there with a lot of different tools. And I think we can all agree it's a pretty critical area to any business today as far as ensuring you have really tight operational controls there.
So, Connor, you're a young guy. What do you think about some of this stuff that's going around on social media about the cybersecurity threats in this kind of pandemic landscape / environment that we're in? What have you heard?
Obviously things are scary, and I think people my age are a little more aware because, a lot of my friends and colleagues or former colleagues are obviously all working from home, or even before the pandemic, were already working from home because that's a transition and a new model of working from home is a little more popular with newer companies and younger folks. So security is an issue that maybe that they don't necessarily think of. Companies, the operational capabilities, and business as a whole, productivity are the main points that I think are driving, C-suite officers, and that's a high priority. But security is kind of an afterthought. And right now with the pandemic and everyone working from home in that sense, I think everyone is rushing now to try and create some sort of security operation that makes the business run as a whole. But I think everyone's playing catch up right now, and people are a little late to the game.
Connor, you nailed it right there. A lot of corporate assets are used to being managed on site. So what do you do now that your corporate assets are no longer on a primary domain where you can push out group policy? You may not have Microsoft Office 365 in the environment, or Intune and Autopilot to control those devices that are no longer physically attached to those networks. And managed service providers such as Anexinet, we've looked at tools that are agnostic as to where they are to be able to deploy patches, security policies, et cetera. So you bring up a great point there.
Who do we partner with to do that?
So currently we're partnered with Kaseya. Kaseya is the #1 RMM platform out there today, and that really helps us. It does multiple things. It gets deployed onto servers and desktops. It does full audits. We're able to see what machines exist in the environment, pull disk information on servers, track trending on that kind of stuff. But most importantly, it enables our support desk to be able to securely remote and provide assistance to anybody that calls into the support center and needs desktop support or assistance on a server. So plus, it gives us a lot of analytics that we actually have business conversations around. So a lot of organizations struggle with lifecycle refresh. We're able to do an inventory export of live audit information from all the systems in the environment and separate it by warranty expiration date. These are the machines that are expiring within the next year. They span different groups. So before it used to be, all right, well, we'll replace all of HRs and then we'll replace all of marketings. Now you can go through, you can do bits and pieces of both and actually, capture the machines that really do need to be replaced first.
But there are some significant levels of audit and compliance configuration in Kaseya as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely. So they adhere to you name it. It spans kind of the gamut. The healthcare industry, legal, financial. It's tried and it's true.
So keeping those endpoints that are now remote and maybe more difficult to manage in some cases is extremely valuable based on what Connor said he's noticing, and then also what you're saying. And so Kaseya gives us the ability to provide that level of remote management compliance support that some customers may be lacking.
Sure. I mean, say you have a CEO that's on vacation and he's sitting on the beach in the Bahamas, but he's having an issue with his laptop. We're able to remote right in, and they see a lot of value in that. And that's not a made up scenario. That's actually happened before. So it's always a great win when you're able to help somebody out when they feel like they're helpless. And I think, one of the other big pieces behind that is, having a great team behind it. And one of the values that we staff our network operations center and support teams with is, the primary value has to be empathy. If you're not empathetic, you're unable to, relate to that person, step into their shoes and help de-escalate a situation, it's not going to be a positive experience. So we want every interaction with us to be a positive one. And moving forward, when there is resolution, they get off the call and say, hey, that was great. That's not like our previous provider where we, really just avoided them like the plague. The last thing we wanted to do was call and sit on hold or try and get through. And it was just always a nightmare.
So going back to the security idea for a second here. So Ryan, SOC and SIM and endpoint control, right? We've really gone out of our way to establish some pretty key partnerships in the cybersecurity area to be able to either resell or offer as a managed service. Can you talk to us about some of our security partners that are focused on this year and the value that they're bringing in the market and why we've kind of gone in that direction?
First of all, we do have a fairly large array of security partners, in our traditional VAR space that we work with customers daily on. So we can resell and deploy and help customers out with a lot of these tools. On the managed front, some of those tools we've carried forward from our professional services realm, and we'll take the next step and provide day 2 management services. And then some of the partnerships are new. So on the SOC as a service side, we've partnered with AlertLogic, one of the premier SIM/SOC companies in the industry. And that enables us to provide a fully outsourced SOC capability to customers, which will also then provide our triage and response service around that. So when there is an issue, we can work with the client then to resolve those issues. Additionally, we've developed our own managed ransomware defense solution. In this case, we've brought together multiple tool sets to provide a very holistic end-to-end set of tools for containing or preventing ransomware. These are all top industry tools that customers should be aware of, but we take those tools, we develop all the policies up front to ensure that you have a consistent approach to how they're deployed. We'll deploy them, and then we'll provide the day 2 operational support. That way a customer can easily jump into these things without a big investment in people, nor, frankly, a big investment upfront in the tooling. We provide that as a service on a monthly per user basis, so you can scale that up and scale that down as needed.
All consumption-based pricing, just like we created our managed services offering. It's all device and consumption-based.
That is correct.
So I think it's really ironic that in a digital age as developed as we are, people have been running IT shops for 25, 30 years. No, oh my word, 60 years. Holy cow. I'm getting old. And they know you can't build something and then not manage, monitor, and maintain it. They know that. But it seems like security, like Connor said, it seems to get left behind. So people buy antivirus and they buy compliance tools, and then they build it, set it, and seem to forget it. But if anything, our experience has taught us in the cybersecurity industry, you can't do that. You have to deploy it, configure it, manage it, monitor it, and then manage it. That means looking at dashboards, getting reports, getting alerts from it. And it doesn't, in this climate, with the cybersecurity landscape being the threat-rich, high attack service environment that it is, that's more important than ever. And I still feel like there's a lot of companies out there that really have a long way to go to start to embrace that ethos.
I agree wholeheartedly. And frankly, it's a challenge, again, in the mid-market space. They just don't have the ability to staff the way they need to provide not only the architectural experience up front, as well as the operational experience on the back end. You look at a typical enterprise, and especially if you look at financial services, their security teams may be several hundred people large, right? And they've got groups broken up into red teams, blue teams, and analysts and architects, and then you've got your compliance and governance folks. So they're able to really handle a lot of that day to day correctly. But boy, the mid-market, where you may have a handful of folks providing all IT services to an organization, they just don't have the ability or the time to really focus on those dashboards and more importantly, responding to the events in those dashboards.
And I think that brings up a really interesting topic about right sizing. A lot of people seem to forget that, people make money off of building frameworks and selling frameworks. And those frameworks can seem relatively prohibitive in terms of, hey, in order to be compliant, you have to follow X framework. Well, that's not necessarily true. You have to follow the framework at a level that makes sense to mitigate the risks for your organization and your business. But that also requires a little bit of interpretation. Don't you agree?
It all starts, as you said, with a inspection of risk. What is it that we have to be afraid of? What is it that would really hurt our organization or our business? And once you can identify, the what we need to protect, and maybe the why we need to protect it, then you can more confidently look at how, and then start right sizing a lot of those recommendations within the frameworks. Certainly, not every organization needs to implement every category within a framework. Those things can be fairly long and lead to a lot of expense. But if you do have, a lot of intellectual property, if you are keeping a lot of personal data for customers or employees, you may need to implement a good bit more than maybe what you would think you would, just to ensure that you keep those crown jewels safe.
I keep telling my wife she needs to take out extra insurance because of all the intellectual property trapped in my brain. She loses me, she's in trouble.
Dave, I think Ryan struck on a few good points there too. So the mid-market, kind of jack of all trade that's working in the IT department, while they're very skilled and they're great IT officers within the organization, usually they get stuck in that day to day. They don't know what they don't know outside of that, which is where the strategy really comes in. So, it's impossible to stay up to date, especially when you're one person that's in charge of, a 5-person, 6, whatever, sized IT department. It's really hard for that continuing education to happen, and to obtain those certs and to move them forward. And when you talk about introducing managed services into an environment like that, it does give them the time to go out and learn more and become more valuable to the organization, make more informed decisions on, future technologies, so you can more accurately build out a 4, 6, 8-year technology roadmap that you're going to adhere to. So at least you have base costs outside of life cycle impulse refreshes, or the unexpected, any kind of failure or anything like that. So, not only does it do that, but you're also, these enterprises and mid markets, they have so many supplier contracts that they have to deal with. And any opportunity that they can get to really kind of consolidate those suppliers' contracts into one, their AR and procurement departments will jump at that. So, the relationships that we've formed with a lot of the largest, providers out there today, they can leverage us to be able to get them the best price. And really, they put the request into us, and their procurement department, creates the PO, and that's it. So they don't have to deal with, jumping around from provider to provider.
Actually, you bring up a really interesting point. Having a managed service provider / consulting firm / value-added reseller with 20 some odd years of experience definitely provides some unique value, I think. Having access to those OEM partners where we can get, very competitive pricing, and we have substantial relationships to be able to engage the right pre-sales engineering and for the various OEMs that we do business with, to bring those to bear to our customers that may be managed services clients or not. I think adds a different level of strategic value.
Absolutely.
So let's go back and recap just real quick, because I think we touched on a lot of really good stuff. So some of the really the hype around managed services, why does it exist and why is it out there, right? It's about bringing the economies of scale of the latest and greatest technology, knowledge, expertise, tooling to bear in the mid-market that may not be able to go and make the upfront capital investments in those things to run a very smooth, very streamlined, and highly organized IT organization. That goes back to that. Don't build it if you don't have to. This has already been done a million times. Leverage the automation, economies of scale, and operational efficiencies of a managed service provider that's been doing this for 10 plus 20 years, and avoid low value tasks, right? Patching and vulnerability management, the blocking and tackling that Matt keeps referring to. It's important to have people with tribal knowledge doing high value things as they continue to grow with their organization, and let them grow and blossom and have a sense of autonomy in your organization, but doing high value things, and take that blocking and tackling and push it off into a highly automated, highly organized managed service provider that provides you the right sized monthly recurring value that you need so that you can get back to business. And security, right? I don't think that that any managed service provider worth their salt can really come and say, listen, we just don't do security. I think it's such an important part of technology as far as an attack vector and a risk mitigation factor that standing up security operations centers with security information and event management systems or SIM tools, plus ransomware and endpoint protection that Ryan talked about, using leading edge technologies so that you can stop command and control and get those bad actors out of your systems, both in threat hunting, so finding things that are there, and also blocking incoming from your network to your servers all the way down to your end user devices is just so critical. And being able to do that with economies of scale and bringing that level of functionality down into the mid-market is just absolutely a requirement. And that is something that up until the past couple of years just really has not been able to be done. And I feel like we're getting ahead of that curve, and we partnered with the right people and the right OEMs to be able to provide very scaled services to be able to do those things.
Dave, you nailed it right there. And, working with some of the largest MSPs, in the United States, a lot of their capability stops at the infrastructure. It stops at that firewall, that there's not much that they can do in terms of app development and customization. When I joined Anexinet, I said, this is what I've been hearing that people need. So when you go through and you're selling, managed services, they're always asking, well, what do I do with my applications guy? Does he stay on? And usually 90% of the time their answer is yes. Yeah, you need them to support your current application. Where now from all the nuts and bolts from A to Z, and Anexinet's able to really consolidate that contract or that employee into a managed service as well. So it's really neat, and it's kind of the complementary total package here. And I use this term lightly, but the one throat to choke. So our app guys are able to work with our infrastructure teams, and that's usually the biggest battle between a development firm and an infrastructure firm. The hardware is not working properly. It's a long back and forth. I'm sure everyone's heard it before, but to have it all under one roof and have a team that does it very, very well, I think provides a lot of value to a lot of the people that are looking to outsource and go to a managed service provider.
Before we let everybody off, let's just do the last two people. Connor, did you have any last thoughts you want to put out there?
Just to touch on what Matt said on his point from connecting everyone within your organization from A to Z. Think of managed services and managed operations as a long-term business partnership instead of just a one-time buy investment. We're here to stay. We're here to help, and I'm excited to have managed services for the future of all IT organizations and businesses. So thank you for having us.
Great. Ryan?
I think many companies are unsure of whether managed service is right for them or how they might take advantage of managed services. They're also a little wary maybe of what it means for their people. And to all of that, I would say it doesn't hurt to have some conversations. Call up a couple managed service providers. Call us up. We'll be happy to come in, sit down, get to understand you, your organization, and talk to you a little bit about how we might be able to help you out. Not necessarily displacing your people, but maybe putting your people in a position to be a little bit more valuable in other ways to your organization. So, a lot of managed service providers, us included, are very flexible and work with each customer differently. And we're happy to do so.
All right. Connor, Dave, Matt, Brian, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.